It is now my pleasure to introduce our morning keynote speaker. I spoke earlier about the importance of including men in the discussion. This gentleman certainly understands and exemplifies the role that men must play in ensuring diversity among our leadership ranks. Barry Ostrowsky is the president and CEO of RWJBarnabas, which is New Jersey's largest not-for-profit integrated healthcare delivery system and the second largest employer in the state of New Jersey. Let's please give a warm welcome to Barry.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Michelle. It's really a delight for me to be here to talk on this topic. And this morning, I had a blinding glimpse of one of the problems with this topic. As I was picking out my wardrobe, I picked out a pink tie. And I said to myself, oh boy, I don't know, does that really make sense? If I pick out a pink tie, then the ladies are going to think the only reason I'm wearing a pink tie is because I'm coming to this event. And then I said, no, what's the difference? I always wear pink ties occasionally, but no, you shouldn't do it. And that's the problem with this issue. Really, that's the problem with this issue. Because the truth of the matter is, the time for analysis is over. The facts speak for themselves, and this is not a sociological white paper, nor is it some anomaly of humanity. The fact that women are underrepresented in boardrooms and underrepresented in the C-suite is by design. And so we can, in fact, explain it away many different ways. We can make all the excuses we want. But the time for analysis having expired, it's now the time for action. And I think meetings like this and others will, in fact, launch and propel the kind of action we need to undertake to correct this weakness in our business community. In fact, I was chatting with someone for whom I have incredible respect, Bernie Flynn, who you'll hear from in a little while. And we said, the truth of the matter is, we ought to fill this room with men. You folks understand what it is we're talking about, and if the problem happens to be our gender, which it is, then we need a way to persuade our gender that we're making a mistake. Now, that's not something about which I need a lot of persuasion. For 42 years, I've heard that from my spouse. I make a lot of mistakes. But as long as I do what's on the refrigerator door, I'm in pretty good shape. And the truth of the matter is, I have become passionate about this particular topic because I have a mentor. You know, when you're in the C-suite, they call it coaching. But the truth of the matter is, I have a mentor. I have a person who is the conscience of our organization, who has insisted that I understand this topic, has insisted that we manage our organization in a way to try to fix this topic. And I'm speaking about somebody that many of you know, Micheline Davis. Micheline Davis taught me. She sat down with me years ago and said, look, this is a problem that we're facing, and if we're going to be the organization we're supposed to be, if we're going to be a social action organization that's committed to helping people live better lives, whether it's through clinical care or social events or intervention in our communities, then we ought to start addressing issues that affect our big organization and not ignore them on the notion that something is more important. And we began a dialogue about women's leadership skills and the need to make sure that women are perfectly well represented in the boardroom and in the C-suite. And on that journey, as everyone likes to say, I became a zealot on this issue, because I don't understand the explanations that we typically get. Why in the Fortune 500 do we have less than 5% women who are CEOs? Why do we have boardrooms that are so dominated by men directors that in fact it's impossible to make a calculation that makes sense altogether? Now, it is true, quote, progress has been made, but I can tell you in our industry, if we were making the same pace of progress in dealing with illness and sickness conditions, people would be absolutely revolutionized because we're not making enough progress. There isn't enough progress on this issue. Now, I've read everything that's been given to me, and there tends to be this notion that it's an old boys network, that a lot of these appointments and promotional opportunities are conducted over adult beverages at the bar after a round of golf or in the locker room. And that seems like a nice explanation, and everybody kind of smiles, but I don't really think that's the explanation. Yes, there's no doubt about the fact that that gets discussed on the golf course and at the bar, but I can tell you, based on the very attributes Michelle recited of the female gender, that it goes way beyond the familiarity of guys talking to one another about who should be in the boardroom. I tend to think it's a certain level of intellectual intimidation. And follow me as I explain this, because maybe you'll find it to resonate. If you're a CEO of a company and you want to sit down and put directors in your boardroom, the last thing you need in the boardroom are women who are going to read the material, actually think about the topics, and then welcome you when you walk into the boardroom with questions. Why would any male who's a CEO invite that into the boardroom? And so the easy way around that is to say, well, none of them have been directors yet. You know, where are we going to find a woman director? They just don't exist. They don't exist by design. They don't exist because that recitation of attributes happens to be accurate. And so there's a comfort level in boardrooms, there's a comfort level in the C-suite that the momentum of the status quo won't raise any issues and everyone will go merrily along. And what suffers are at least two or three things. One, that business, our industry, economics altogether suffer because the best and the brightest are not in charge. And that's not to suggest every woman is the best and the brightest, because we certainly know every man's not the best and the brightest. But what we do know is by excluding 50% of the population and a greater and greater percentage of those who graduate from educational curriculum that could help the business, by excluding those folks, we are putting a cap on the success of the business. Now, if that's not bad enough, we're taking 50% of our population and stigmatizing them by telling them you're not qualified. And by the way, it's unlikely you're going to become qualified, because until you serve on the board, we're not going to put you on the board. And that self-fulfilling negative prophecy is exactly what happens, and anyone who wishes to explain it based on a golf game, I think, is just coming up with a fairy tale to make everyone feel better. And so for me, I don't understand, and as I speak to my colleagues, and of course the folks, the men in this room, and I counted them, there aren't too many, but the men in this room are already converted to the notion that maintaining the status quo is a mistake. So the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to go out and we're going to have to recruit other men, and they don't have to be CEOs, other men who may aspire to be CEOs, men who have positions of responsibility in organizations, who are thought leaders, irrespective of their directorship or not, and get them to understand that we are precluding a great reservoir of leadership and insightful help for your organization by excluding women. I think the second thing we have to do is come up with an approach that's easily adopted by those business entities that heretofore have really not been involved on this issue in any productive way. Again, thanks to Micheline's guidance in our organization, we've done a number of things that may be helpful for other organizations. We began a Women's Leadership Alliance because we knew we had 75% of our workforce at RWJBarnabas Health are women. And that is a big workforce that is not effectively represented in our board rooms. We have 14 boards in our organization. Better represented in the C-suite than ever before, but still insufficiently. And so we wanted to train the 75% of the women in our organization who might aspire to, in fact, be in management at the senior level or eventually in the directorship trustee role in our organization. And it's been a great success. It took resources, but not many. It took leadership. We had that. And I've rarely seen an initiative in an organization like ours that has helped to galvanize the excitement among as many people as our Women's Leadership Forum, originally and Alliance now, is generating. Secondly, we decided that we needed a formal diversity and inclusion piece of culture for our organization. Now, diversity and inclusion, of course, goes way beyond gender issues. And in our world, it's absolutely imperative that we are competent when it comes to every culture and every ethnicity if we're going to succeed in doing our mission the way we hope to. But within that diversity and inclusion culture, we need to concentrate on this gender anomaly. And so we have gone to the nominating committees of our boards, and we have put them on notice that starting last year, every slate of prospective trustees must meet a standard for gender equality and diversity and inclusion. And if these trustees, who are incumbent trustees, do not, then management will in fact say to them, we need to expand, we need to modify, we need to in fact include on your nominating slate people that will help us reverse this problem for our organization. And when we began to discuss that as management, we felt, well, that could be somewhat presumptuous when you talk to your trustees about that, and yet it was embraced without argument. It was encouraged among the trustees to one another, and I'm delighted because we will in fact be showing, as time goes on, much greater diversity in the boardroom, and certainly will be enhancing and correcting the gender representation that we have. And so, in my experience, rarely are you presented with an opportunity to understand a problem that has this negative impact on the business you're trying to manage, come up with what I think is an effective solution, and execute on that solution to meaningful results that will be palpable and obvious to all those that are in the organization. And I couldn't be prouder of my colleagues in my organization, because this has been not something that we've had to shove down anyone's throat, so to speak. This is something that people are embracing. Now, the difficulty with writing it out and doing it is it tends to overlook the awkward, uncomfortable, everyday human interaction that surrounds this issue. It won't nearly be as smooth as I make it out. It won't be without aggravation and concern. It won't be without whispers in the coffee room. I'm afraid that's part of it. But if that's going to scare any of us, if that's going to be the reason we don't take this on, then frankly, we probably deserve to fail on the issue. We are going to have to persevere through that kind of commentary. We're going to have to put up with the jokes that should long ago have expired, but I'm afraid haven't yet. We're going to have to be leaders to lead through this fog that seems to have enveloped corporate America about gender equality. And so I think leadership on this topic requires real leadership. It requires very much a commitment to a result. It requires sustaining ourselves on a day where everything seems to have gone wrong on this topic, because 2 days later things will go right on this topic. I am hopeful that someday this won't even be an issue, nor should it be now, but it is. Someday we will have the kind of gender equality as well as appropriate diversity and inclusion throughout management and throughout governance. And I can tell you, when that day arrives, businesses will be better run, consumers will be better treated and supported, and I think progress will have been made, and you folks will have been among those to have made that progress for our society in general. I encourage you, as you enjoy this day, to really call ourselves to action. I certainly am there, and I'll be with you in any way that I can help. Thank you very much.